What's up, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Between the Cons. My name is Chris, and I am your fearless leader, and with me today, the Wonder Twins.
Hello! Hello, Governor.
The Ginger Giant.
I can't even do
it. You can't.
I've never recorded with the Copelands before. That is awful.
And then with us today, we have a special geek, Conor Lastowka.
Good evening, guys. What is happening? It's blizzarding in Vermont, and I'm happy to be here.
It's not blizzarding here.
Did you go by Burlington Coat Factory before the blizzard?
I didn't. I've got a perfectly good coat, and I believe that esteemed chain is based out of New Jersey, so I think it's
awkward.
It would have been a long journey.
Look, they're more than great coats. Haven't you heard?
And this is the quality radio that we bring to you today. Burlington Coat Factory Radio. You're welcome. Well, Connor, I'm glad that you're not stuck out in the cold, at least.
I am
and thank you for joining us on today's episode. We are going to get to know you a little bit better in just a few minutes, but before we do that, everybody, if you are on the internet, we are too. Between the Cons on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, at Between the Cons on all of those. Also, if you haven't reviewed the show, do that. Go to the podcast app, review, rate the show, check us out, give us some nice things to say that make us feel good.
We like saying nice things about ourselves.
We like saying nice things about ourselves, yes.
Did you introduce Kyle?
Yeah,
I tried, but he was still giggling because you guys are huge dorks and we love you. But he couldn't make it through his roar.
I couldn't, yeah.
But he tried, by God.
He did. You did your best. We'll give you a big gold sticker the next time we see you.
The next time. Have you guys met in person?
Never.
Yeah.
No, we haven't.
That's what I thought.
So I guess not the first time we meet you, but the second time.
Yeah, and we are spanning 3 time zones right now. With Connor in Vermont. It is it's pretty late for you. Actually right now. It's about almost 9:30 at night. The Copelands in Central. There we go. That's how time zones work. Central time zone, and then we're in Mountain time zone. Really spanning the country on this one. If we only would have waited one more day, I could have recorded this in San Diego. We could have hit the whole country.
I know, honestly, I thought you should have asked Larry King to be on this episode because, he's from California, but he just declined your invitation. So
yeah, he's
maybe
rude.
Next time.
I was your second choice after Larry King?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how these things work,
You're welcome.
Are you not honored by that, Connor?
Wouldn't be the first time.
But with that, let's jump in. Let's get to know Connor a little bit better. So you guys stick around. We'll be right back.
Allow me to break the ice.
Hey everyone.
I'm shaking your hand too long. Wow, this is awesome.
So Connor, we've said your name a bunch. But we don't
just like I like it.
Just like you like it. But we don't actually know, or we do, but our listeners don't actually know anything about you. So introduce yourself, quick little bio. Who is Conor Lastowka?
Well, guys, the reason that I'm here is because I met the twins at our at a event 2.5 years ago at this point in time. The Rifftrax Live Mystery Science Theater 3000 reunion show, and I have been a writer. My role is senior writer producer at Rifftrax.com since it's existed, and it's been around for almost 12 years right now. And Rifftrax is a site. It's an offshoot of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which was a popular show in the 90s where a guy and 2 robots watched old B movies and made fun of them. And Rifftrax is pretty much the same basic premise without the fiction of the robots. Same guys that were on Mystery Science Theater, and we do live shows, we do streaming movies, we do old educational shorts.
More recent movies as well, and
we do more
not
recent
necessarily like super old B movies that no one has likely ever heard of. I think.
Yeah, we put out Batman and versus Superman just a couple months ago. Stuff like that too, which is weird, complicated syncing technology that always sounds more complicated than it is. But yeah, we've been able to do Transformers movies, Twilights, all those kind of things with by that.
I recall a time in college where we all gathered at a friend's house, which coincidentally was called Robot House. And we watched the first riff track for the Twilight series. And there were probably 25 of us there. And it was the best thing. It was the best thing to happen.
Pandemonium.
That was probably like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago, those Twilight ones. Those were ones that, I mean, man.
They were
We didn't think those were going to really play with our audience, but they turned out to be our most popular thing we've ever done.
They were golden. That's why.
It made the movie like palatable. Like it was just like, I mean, it literally made it watchable. So thank you for making something halfway tolerable. It's like the cherry flavoring in the nasty medicine they give kids. Like
exactly.
That's Rifftrax. It is.
We play Mary Poppins for you. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
So as a senior writer and producer, Connor, you're like writing the goofs.
Yeah. So it's easy to describe it as you're making fun of a movie, but it's not just sitting there and being like, well, boy, does this suck.
Right.
So it's sort of coming up with jokes throughout the course of the movie, responding to what the people are saying, people are doing, putting words in their mouth or adding in your own observations or stories about. It can be any type of thing. It's not necessarily just ragging on the movie for the course of an hour and a half.
Which would probably not be as good at all.
It would probably not be as good just because some movies are you enjoy them, what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think of the old guys from the Muppets that are sitting in the balcony. like nobody wants an hour and a half of that.
Right. Yeah, but they're having fun too. Like it's they're seemingly against their will, but they're making the best of a bad situation.
Oh, for sure. So what got you into comedy in the first place?
Oh man, my story of how I ended up working at Rifftrax is somewhat of a weird coincidence, and also having your act together when the weird coincidence struck. Comedy had always been something that I was enjoyed doing, and but hadn't really thought about how it could be something you could make a career out of. I wrote stuff for the school paper. I did a daily comic strip in college, but wasn't really sure what what outlets there were for that. And so at some point in time, I got a job sort of as a PA at a small film colorization studio in San Diego. I had made videos in college and that sort of thing. That was right out of college. And soon after that, this film studio, they would make these old B movies colorized, which it's a questionable endeavor. But I don't really have anything against. You're not ruining the integrity of Plan 9 from Outer Space or Little Shop of Horrors by doing that sort of thing. But they would colorize them, and they would try to make them the definitive version of these movies. They would restore the black and white ones. He still had that. And then they would get Mike Nelson, who was the host and head writer of Mystery Science Theater, to come down to San Diego, record it was more of like a DVD commentary track that was supposed to be funny, as opposed to what Rifftrax sort of is now. And so he moved to town. They were like, well, let's see what else he can do now that he lives here, because we're only putting out one of these DVDs every quarter pretty much. And so Rifftrax was an offshoot of that. And I was quick to sort of latch onto him and do everything I could to let him know I was funny. And at some point in time, he was like, well, I can't just write all of these by myself. And he's like, that kid in the corner doesn't look like he's too busy. Maybe he can come in here and see what he can do.
And there you are just twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah. I mean, I would walk by and be like, "Oh, hey, like I'm just listening to the Ricky Gervais podcast, so clearly I do have good taste in this material." I guess. But he also needed me to go into the booth and be the voice of Disembaudio, who was like the means we had of syncing up these MP3s. The process I mentioned earlier. This fake robot would say a line every now and then he would come in with a joke or be on the intro joking around. So I got to go to all the recordings of these things. So I had my foot in the door there just because I was, spending more time with these guys as they were recording them and going out for beers afterwards.
And all of that started by just being there, just being around.
Yeah, being there, but also just sort of like, hey, look, this blog post I wrote is now the Alt Weekly printed it as their cover story, and like I made this video and it's going viral. So stuff that I was sort of doing in my free time was proved to be an asset once it was like, well, you say you're funny, like, do you have any proof of that? And it's like, well, here you go. Here's some stuff that I've been working on. That's my advice. Have your act together if you're ever find yourself in a likely situation. Yeah.
Don't look too busy, but have your act together.
Have the newspaper with 2 holes cut in it so you can peep through.
Hey,
so
if you're on the front of that newspaper, even better.
Exactly.
So you mentioned writing an article that the Alt Press picked up, and you are a writer with Rifftrax, and you've actually written a few books.
Yeah.
So your books have the best titles, and I love them. But I'm gonna let you.
Thank you.
Announce them. So what are your books, and can you give us a quick summary of them?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I just put out my second novel last month. It's called The Pole Vault Championship of the Entire Universe, and that's a sort of serious book about a widow of a World War I veteran, and it's about a pole vault championship. And a girl believed that her grandfather was dead. It turns out he's not, and he's created his own micronation, which that's micronations are what happens when some lunatic decides that their little corner of the earth is going to be a new country. So he has developed his own country, but he needs people to recognize it. And so in order to do that, he's tricked some people into coming there to compete in this competition. And along the way, aliens show up and turn it into more of an intergalactic affair.
Well,
That premise sounds amazing.
It does.
And I've read
So on board.
part of it. I've not gotten all the way through the book yet. And I was really impressed. Like, it really took me back, like, because I love books kind of like what Louis Sacker writes.
Oh, yeah,
Or
yeah.
Louis Sakar. Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
Hell yeah.
And I mean, it literally makes it. This is literally almost like an adult version of that, not like in like a Careless Whispers adult version, but like a grown up version of that. And I was impressed by just your thought process going into it. Is just you take these absurd concepts and pile them together and make a really good plot out of it. The opposite of Ready Player One, but we'll get that in a little bit. And I was really impressed by that. It really took me back in time a little bit to kind of some of those books that I loved growing up.
Oh man, well thanks a lot. That's high praise. I loved that. I loved those books too. They were, and me and my brother both loved them. And then the other book was I released that probably 5 years ago. It's called Gone Whaling, and that is another just extremely weighty, serious slog. But it's about a college student who, through unexplained means, starts waking up every other day on board a 19th century whaling ship. And so he sort of has to navigate the worlds of this whaling ship, which is just packed full of very incompetent whalers and a corrupt captain. But he also has to balance his life back at school, where people are sort of trying to exploit his situation and all the various things that happen around being a college student who's unable to attend classes every other day.
Does it have anything to do with the Joe Pesci and Danny Glover film Gone Fishing?
Oh my gosh, I hate that you just brought that up.
Well,
The 1997 serious, critically acclaimed film.
The classic.
I think it was, yeah. It swept the Oscars that year. I think maybe that was in my head. I've never seen that movie, but I think I must have looked that up at some point in time just to be like, all right, when I'm doing the book cover, let's make sure that it doesn't have anything to do with that. But
That was like, it was like a comedy that was like really safe for 10-year-old Kyle, for my dad to show me, and I watched it as an adult, and actually it's really hilarious, but not
sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
Fun
But
little-
it seemed
fun
like that was
little
probably
watch.
one they were like, Grumpy Old Men was just shockingly popular. Like, make that movie again.
It's just two dudes on a boat the whole time. That's
I
all.
gotta go bigger though. How can I go bigger? Whaling.
So yeah, it's been two obscure topics that I've sort of decided to write these books about. Two obscure, maybe not necessarily commercially viable topics, but they've been a lot of fun to work on. I've really found it rewarding, and the people that have read it have connected with them and enjoyed them. So that's been especially rewarding for me.
So what do you do in your free time when you're not writing for like the seemingly hundreds of things that you write for?
Yeah, well, I'm taking a break from the book stuff for now, but I moved to Vermont about 2.5 years ago, and I sort of took that as an opportunity to try and do more comedy performing. So there's a surprisingly lively scene here for a small town. So I've been doing a lot of improv comedy there. There's been a lot of opportunities to do fun stuff there, and it's been the sort of thing. Learning those techniques, I think, has benefited writing as well. Just because there are different ways of thinking about comedy, and as you perform, you learn more about how your writing should sound on stage and how to make it sound natural. So that's been a lot of fun. And once it gets nice, I like to spend a lot of time outdoors around here because Vermont is beautiful. And
when it's not snowing.
Yeah. I mean, the snowing is going to be great. This weekend it was great last weekend for skiing, but I do look forward to, pretty much by the time baseball season starts, I'm like, all right, this is the season is, everything has happened. Yeah. Like, you get an extra 2 weeks of winter, I think, once baseball season starts here. But then once you have that, it's like, all right, I want to be outside, be on a bike, be in the mountains, hike, camp, all that sort of stuff. So it's a good way to get away from the, work is a lot of fun, but you're also, like a lot of jobs, staring at a computer screen all day. So it's nice to be in a place where you can get out of town in about 5 minutes once you hop on the highway here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes life nice. Super easy. So the last question I've got for you on the basic who is Connor slate. So we are a like nerd geek centric podcast. So I mean the twins, Kyle and I are all actually here because of our different nerd concentrations, as I like to call them. I'm a little bit of everything, but most specifically, I am crazy about comic books. The twins love their Nintendo for some reason, and Kyle's big into sci-fi and fantasy literature. So what is your biggest nerdy geeky obsession?
Well, so, I have an answer for this. I would say that the thing that I'm probably most, and this is not the answer, but the thing that I'm probably most, obsessive with, that I don't necessarily talk to everyone I know about, is following the Washington Nationals. That's something that I pay a lot of attention to.
Which is the baseball team.
The baseball team, right. From DC. Which
just to let some of our listeners who might not yes. who might not know the sports ball is.
And again, you don't need to. I think about that whenever I think about people, lining up in line for a movie that I would never go see in a million years. Just like, all right, they're just thinking about that the same way that you think about this baseball team. So it helps to empathize with that sort of thing. But the one thing that that's obviously not a geeky interest. The one thing that it can be, of course, but
Kyle is also a huge sports nut.
My number two is that I've been in the same fantasy baseball league since 5th grade, and with 4 of the same 12 guys, and
how many of them are GMs currently of actual baseball teams?
Well, that's maybe what we all aspire to in our outside lives. Yeah.
Well, the geeky aspects of baseball I find very hard to do because I never took a statistics course, and once you start talking WOBA and WPA plus, I'm sort of it's all over my head. But
don't worry, guys, I know what he's talking about.
I'm glad one of us does.
The thing that my wife once said is the nerdiest thing that she's ever seen me express interest in is the Copelands probably know about it. Is speed runs. There's a biannual video game speedrun marathon called Games Done Quick that whenever it's on and even when it's not, they post their videos to YouTube. I can sort of go down a rabbit hole of that of just watching people play these games so well that it's it's almost like sorcery where they've figured out a lot of them are games that I grew up playing on Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and so to watch these people do these things that you never knew was possible.
That you spent your entire childhood trying to figure out how to do.
Oh, or still am unable to do. Right. Like it's but yeah, so they've played them to the point so well that it's not even like I couldn't I watched them and then I'm like, oh, I'll try that. And it's like, no, but it's not working. I did not get better just by watching that guy beat Zelda 2 in an hour. Like, that's not going to happen.
The people that I totally like, the allure of speed runs is like incredible. It like blows my mind to watch people beat Super Mario World in 5 minutes or less. Like, it's just crazy to me. It's like, how did they find these glitches, and how did they literally glitch out the game in the first level to trigger the credits? Like, I mean, it's just
perfect alignment, and
it is
hacking the game's memory just by doing stuff that Mario can do. So they usually do a good job of explaining them. So I can find myself watching one of those and then like half an hour later sort of like come to and be like, all right,
breaking out the old like dusting off the old Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
right after watching. That's actually a really good one. I was that's I don't know what I was expecting. But that's better than I was expecting.
Yeah, so I don't actually do them myself, and I don't go to that event, but I donate whenever they do it because it's for charity, and it's fun to it's sort of fun to see what they come up with because they are it's an incredible talent.
Yeah. So you just said a word, and I'm going to use it as a segue. But you just said the word donate, and Rifftrax has a Kickstarter going on. So I'm going to use this as the perfect segue to get you to talk about the Rifftrax Kickstarter, and then let the Copelands, let the Wonder Twins kind of take over, grilling you about that.
Yes. Yeah. And what's great about Rifftrax Kickstarters, this is basically your 6th successful Kickstarter. I think that's some type of a record. Honestly, and it's going on right now, guys. They're going stretch goals right now, so it's not too late to give. By the time this comes out, you'll still have a few days to give. It's worthwhile. We really enjoyed the time we got to spend with them doing that, and whenever we went to the reunion show, and honestly, one of the major things I wanted to ask you about the Kickstarter is, y'all have been doing this for 6 years now, and so many other companies have failed to do good Kickstarters. What is your secret sauce for a good Kickstarter?
Man, well,
the weirdest way to put it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it Thousand Island? Tell me.
That sauce we gave you in Minneapolis was a secret. You were not supposed to mention that sauce.
Oh,
I think the honest question to that is that we have generous and loyal fans, and that they are willing to support it based on this, because it is a weird thing that we're doing. We are kickstarting live shows, but we can't give you tickets to the live shows because it's a complicated, weird system of movie theaters all over the country, hundreds of them. So the first time we ever did it, we weren't sure if it would work because it was a hard thing for people to sort of wrap their heads around. But we figured out a way to sort of, give other options, be it, starting the VODs of the shows, be it like merchandise that we wouldn't normally make other way. It's sort of a way for people almost to pre-order that, and then to do, more special things like the VIP experiences that you guys came to. So, I mean, I feel like some companies, they try to do one of these, and it's the way that they're announcing themselves to the world. And without sort of having that built-in fan base, sometimes it's harder for a brand new entity to, unless it's a really great idea that sort of goes viral, it's harder for people to gain a foothold on Kickstarter. But
absolutely. And tell us about the Kickstarter that you've currently going on. You've got 2 films slated for this year. Tell us some about the current Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'm super excited because both of them are ones that I've not seen all the way through. We're doing Space Mutiny. I mean, this is we've exceeded our goal. So it's all live. Space Mutiny was a classic one, probably one of the most top 10 beloved Mystery Science Theater episodes. And I guess it's been long enough, and we were able to get the rights to it that they decided that they were fine to redo it because Kevin and Mike and Bill were all on that show. And then the other one is Krull, which is a movie that was from the 80s, a sci-fi epic that I think was head-to-head with Return of the Jedi when it came out, maybe, but did not gain the widespread audience and popularity of Return of the Jedi. So Liam Neeson is in it, and Robbie Coltrane of Hagrid fame But that's one that I don't know much about. But people who one of my childhood friends has a Krull license plate, so he was
Oh my goodness.
he was somewhat dismayed to hear this. But I was like, listen, it's going to be fun. Like, you of all people, if you're crazy enough to have a Krull license plate, should enjoy going to the theater, seeing it. Like,
Exactly.
but yeah, so people seem really pumped about both of those choices, and I can't wait to dive in. We're probably going to start writing Space Mutiny in a couple of weeks. So
That's got to be like a little bit daunting to want to tackle. I mean, a film that is so beloved by so many like MST3K fans. I mean, it's not the first time you've done, MST3K movies, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians or others. But I mean, and certainly I think that's got to be a little bit of a task ahead of you to figure out, well, how do we pay homage to this version that people are used to, but also put our own spin on it?
Yeah, and I think at this point in time, we've been around for a long time, and sort of whether it was natural or intentional or a combination of sort of evolved into its own style, I would guess, is probably a little different than what those guys are doing. And it's also been I would venture it's been 20 years, maybe more than that, since this came out. So there's all sorts of new things to talk about, new ways to do comedy, and those guys. We'll usually go through a movie once we've done this and sort of check for similarities, just to try to not echo things, or either intentionally or unintentionally. I don't think that there's any like legal standing, but just from the point of view of giving it a new experience. But sometimes they remember what was there and sometimes don't. So it's in some ways we're all going in sort of fresh because it has been so long.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, in that writing process, I'm glad you brought that up. Obviously, in terms of my writing, I'm super bad at accepting criticism. I immediately think that people are trying to tear me down, and I did the absolute worst job in the world when I write something, and somebody's trying to genuinely try to help me make it better, but I don't accept that well, and that's my fault and something I'm working on. However, how do you guys handle disagreements in the quote-unquote virtual writer's room? Let's say you write a really awesome riff that is great, and you just get shut down. How do you work out those disagreements?
Well, it's virtually it's kind of easy, because you can always just add a comment into the document that says pitch something new, and you don't really have to confront the person. You don't necessarily have to explain why. But when we're all in a house together, I think you get a sense of something. If you are reading through a script, something doesn't necessarily land or get a laugh, or it just doesn't really work, there's proof right there that it might be something that people want to change. So I could probably count on one hand the amount of times that someone has either taken something personally, or I felt like something should have stayed in, and I should have fought harder for it. But it's when you count those up and compare them to the amount of times that you've written something and people have laughed wholeheartedly at it, and or cracked up on stage, or the audience has laughed, it's the sort of thing that you just have to ignore, and there's another joke in 10 seconds, let's move on to that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good to be criticized, but everyone knows that they're here because they're funny, and everyone else thinks they're funny. So it's just, and sometimes it's like, I was having trouble coming up with a joke there. Like I slugged something in, and I knew it wasn't the best thing in the world. So let's replace it, please.
Well, I mean, I think Trace described this. We'd gone to a live show with Trace and Frank from Mr. Science Theater 3000 in Pensacola. Probably, I don't know if it was a little bit before the reunion show, but they described that type of just slamming something in as almost like a state park joke. Pointing out something just as, there's a state park. It's not, I mean, it's just an obvious thing. It's not really something funny. So it is something like, you all are working together to basically make something for the greater good, the best product possible. And you're exactly right. It's just something you can't take personally.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. And you just try to, you're making a team effort here. So sometimes, you just stop and can ask for help. Like I'm stuck on this moment. Like, can you guys throw in? And someone looking at it through clean eyes, brand new, a clean slate might have an immediate instinct about a different direction to go and you hadn't thought about. So.
Definitely. And what is, in terms of what you yourself enjoy more, do you enjoy watching a good movie or riffing a bad movie? Like, if you had a choice between the two, like, what would be your preference?
Oh, man. I've got to go with the good movie. I mean, the good movies make you feel something that you just don't get in a lot of other scenarios, and when or a lot of other art forms. And when they are good and pulled off well, it's so unique. But man, sitting around and when watching a bad one or showing a bad one to someone for the first time is its own experience too. And that when we have had the opportunity to be in Nashville or be in San Diego all together and really experience something for the first time. Like I think it was 2 years ago, we tracked down the vaunted third film by James Wynn of Birdemic fame.
No.
He had made 2 films that we had done, and then we managed to track down one that nobody had ever seen. It had never been seen in any form, and so we brought that to Nashville and watched it for the first time, and it was just like, it was a great experience just for everyone to sort of take this in and fling lines at it and look forward to doing it together when we actually had a chance to.
Would you say that that in terms of bad movies, do you have a guilty pleasure bad movie you go to? I mean, I feel like mine is UHF by Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh, man, yeah.
I love that movie. It is, and I know it's the music video and it's awful by 2000 standards, but do you have a guilty pleasure bad movie?
Oh, well, I love UHF. I almost am
Is that a guilty
taken
pleasure?
aback that someone's
Well, it's good. It's good, and I don't know. It's a fantastic film. I mean, it's not as I wish more people.
Fantastic might
respect
be a stretch.
it.
But
quotable, and I was talking about UHF on the podcast last week. I was talking about the Wheel of Fish, but anyway, there's never a bad time to bring up UHF. A guilty pleasure. I mean, I go to bat for the movie How High.
oh my gosh,
Starring
yes.
Method Man and Redman,
Oh.
which is way funnier than it had, and smarter than it had any right to be.
Oh
It's
my
also very
gosh.
stupid at times, but
You just got so many points from this side of the podcast.
we do in Vermont I have an improv team, and we do a show where we through various means get a movie from the audience, and then we improvise the sequel to it on the spot after we've read its Wikipedia thing. And I'm always hoping someone's going to yell out How High.
Do you already have that sequel like planned out in your head?
Yeah. I've been mailing Method Man my scripts, and
You have to let us know if
Wait,
he
time
ever...
out.
the guy who
You
plays
have
I
to.
Need Money.
You
has
have
a
Method
restraining
Man's
order.
address? Can you share that?
No, I wish that would be something. But another movie that's not. That's I know this is not probably on the same level, but I love Dirty Work too. I don't think anyone thinks that is that bad either, but that's a pleasure, I guess. Maybe not a guilty pleasure, but
A pleasure. I think it's the same as like UHF is.
yeah.
It's not so much in the right company. It's not so much a guilty pleasure, and in the wrong company, just nobody knows what you're talking about.
Right, yeah, but if I'm at a party and like, well, what this happened at some point in time. Anyway, but if I heard someone like saying a line from How High, I would walk over there and talk to him, probably for the rest of the night.
Hey, what's up? Did we just become best friends? Because I think we did.
No, yeah. I heard a guy. I was on a bus that was that would take you from like the place you were all staying at a friend's wedding to the actual venue, and I was like
like a shuttle
taking
bus?
a nap on that bus because it had been a long night the night before. But he was we were driving along, and he said something. He's like, this looks just like that scene in Karate Kid 3. And I bolted up, and I was like, did you just say something about Karate Kid 3? And he's like, yeah, this looks like the cliff where they have to go down to retrieve the bonsai tree from. And I was like, well, we're going to talk about this for the rest of the bus ride, man.
Hey, what's up? I didn't know anyone else saw that movie. How's it going?
Yeah. So that's another guilty pleasure. That's one of my favorite Rifftraxes we've done. And it's I would show that to people and sort of watch expectantly, it's a good part coming up.
Oh, yeah. Well, and honestly, that brings up a really good point as well of is there any movie Rifftrax-wise that you've not recorded that you would want to record? Absolutely. And if you had a choice of people to riff it with, who would you choose, dead or alive, who would you choose to riff that movie with?
Oh man, so this is something people sort of don't understand sometimes. But like I said earlier, Rifftrax isn't necessarily just like making fun of a movie. So sometimes it's fun to do a movie that you actually like, and just have a bit more of a chance to like spend some time in that world and explore it. So the movies that I would pick, I would want to do like two of my favorites. I would want to do It's a Wonderful Life, and I would want to do It's a Field of Dreams. And
I would watch that one.
yeah, it would be so much fun. Just I don't know. There's just so much. When you think about the movies you like so much more, you start to notice things about them. You start to, just mentally write skits about these things. So we put in Field of Dreams as a Kickstarter stretch goal. It's a Wonderful Life as a stretch goal last year. It didn't hit. I'm not sure. I don't think it's in there this year. But those would be two of the ones I would do if we could do one that was guaranteed to make its money back. And having a guest, like I said before, I love Dirty Work, and I would want Norm Macdonald in on them.
Yes.
He's my favorite
yes.
of all time. And something almost happened in the early days of Rifftrax when we were trying to get a bit more celebrities. We got in after the weekend, and he had left a phone message for Mike. I think he had got the packet we sent him and was like, "Yeah, the Rifftrax, like that sounds really cool. Like, call me back." And for whatever reason, like, I don't know if he just didn't pick up the phone or just had, moved on, but we never got him to do it. And I've always wanted him to do the Sketchfest shows we've done. It just hasn't happened. But I think he would be really good. It would be really fun to sort of write what you would assume a Norm Macdonald joke would sound like. And yeah, I guess if we did Field of Dreams, it'd be cool to have James Earl Jones in the booth. But,
oh my gosh.
Going back to the other movie I said, it'd be pretty fun to have a member of the Wu-Tang Clan in on the booth too. Because
my gosh.
Guys, I've thought about a lot too. So.
I would pay so much money to watch How High Rifftrax with not just like one member of the Wu-Tang Clan, but
Yes.
all of the remaining members of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right. That would make me very happy. I'm not
and
sure if
Connor,
anyone else-
and then just Connor there as well.
That would be. I think Norm Macdonald, I could probably keep it together and be like, here's what's going on. Like we got to say these lines and be professionals. But getting into the booth with Woo, I would probably end up like Chris Farley on the talking to Paul McCartney or Jeff Bridges.
Yep, just the interviews with Chris Farley.
Yeah,
Oh
that would
my
be
gosh.
that would be me. You remember when you said raw, I'm gonna give it to you with no trivia? It's like cocaine straight from Bolivia. Was that true?
Be cool, baby. Be cool.
Now I want this to happen like way more. Oh my
Yeah, give him 10 more years. I bet You God and Master Killer will be hard up for some gigs by that point in time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just discussing things that essentially that are things you want to riff or things you want to highlight. Kind of make you a segue into the next little portion here. You and Mike Nelson recently started a podcast called 372 Pages You'll Never Get Back.
Mm-hmm.
And you first tackled Ready Player One.
That's true.
So tell us some about that. We're going to segue into Kyle, who is kind of the aficionado of this book, so to speak. Well, how to segue
in
into
present
just talking
company,
about
at least.
Yeah.
Exactly. So tell us some about the podcast, and Kyle will have some additional insight on that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another. It hasn't come out yet, but that's another one that I definitely want to take care of. And I'm pretty sure, probably by the time this airs, that's going to be an additional stretch goal in our Kickstarter. So keep an eye out for that. I hope
Okay.
I hope that will hit because, so me and Mike started a podcast that was sort of, the premise was a podcast book club, and we were going to read a book that we were pretty sure we were going to hate because around the time probably that the first trailer or maybe TV commercial for Ready Player One, the movie, came out, people started to sort of circulate a few passages of the book to be like, hey, most people don't know this because this book came out 6.5 years ago, but this book is not very good. And so I saw some of these passages, and I'm like, I don't like this, and I know for a fact that Mike is not going to like this. And so we're like, let's get together and just sort of like read it, 40 pages at a time and talk about it. And it turned out to be something that, was timed pretty well because there's a lot more interest in the book because of the movie, and people sort of found it and had a chance to write in with their own thoughts and sort of share them on Facebook and submit their favorite dumb sentences of the week. And, we found ways to take this world of the book and do skits about it or fake scenes from the movie that hadn't come out. And it was popular enough that we decided to do the author's second book, which is Armada, which, Ready Player One was a well-received book upon publication. I'm not sure how or what was going on or what critics were drinking in the water that day.
I've legitimately never heard of it.
Oh yeah, it is baffling, and that's I hope that as the movie approaches, that's something that gets breached. An intrepid journalist tracks that down because it's a really weird thing because people hate it now, and it was universally praised when it came out, and obviously the book hasn't changed. But his second book, Armada, was not well received, so we are currently in the process of exploring that one to sort of be like, all right, so the book we hated was well received. This book is very poorly received, so how is it going to be any different? So it's been fun. It's been fun. It's when we say hate again, it's a thing we enjoy doing. So it's not just sort of ragging on the book for that long, an hour every week.
Thanks for giving us an overview of the show. I will admit to you on air that I have not listened to that show, and I feel terrible as a podcast host for not doing my research about that. But tell us a little bit more about sort of like the structure. I mean, you just outlined the structure of the show. Have you received any like backlash from fans of the book? It was received well at the beginning, like when it came out, the movie's coming out. Like, what's kind of been the fans' reception of your show?
Well, first of all, don't apologize because I think before the last episode, I calculated with Mike that we've spent over 17 hours talking about these two books so far, which is stunning. I looked it up, and just to read the audiobook of one of them was 12 hours. So it's not a big deal at all to have not done this. But I think that sort of the way that people found the podcast was through us at first, and then it sort of expanded to people being like, oh, if you don't like this book, like here's a cathartic way to sort of experience it or to do this. And everyone knows, everyone became well aware November 2016 that your Facebook bubble is not the world. So it's hard for me to get a sense of where the people are who like this book, because everyone that I see interacting with on Twitter and who reaches out to me is on the same page as being like, yeah, this is not very good. This is really fun to experience. And I lurk around I've poked my head into the Ready Player One Reddit community where people are enthusiastic. Yeah, the people are enthusiastic about it there, but there's just not very many of them. It's not like you're not poking your head into the Star Wars thing where every post is going to have thousands of comments and all that sort of stuff. So there's a podcast that reads the book a chapter at a time and talks about it from a fan's perspective, and we've been sort of playing email tag, trying to get them on to discuss what the hell are you guys thinking? Like, why is this book the one that you've dedicated your time and efforts to?
Just a podcast fight? That sounds amazing.
How is this not satirical? Right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that, when you talk to people about it, you're going to get a lot of like, hey man, it was just a fun book. And, I grew up in that era and like the references spoke to me. Like they're all things that I like too. Which, that's fine. Like who cares if that's the reason you like something? Like I said, I like going to baseball games, and a lot of people wouldn't enjoy that, but I just think that there's enough things in the book that when you sort of take a close look at it, it doesn't really hold up to any sort of scrutiny. And if you're defensive, I dislike the turn off your brain and enjoy it defense because like it shouldn't be a caveat.
Right. And really quick, I don't think we've actually said the name of your podcast, Connor.
Oh, yeah, it's 372 pages we'll never get back.
So if that doesn't tell you how he feels about the book, then I don't know what will.
That was gonna be my segue into this section. Was like,
sorry.
So,
all right, cool.
So for someone who hosts a podcast called 370 Pages We'll Never Get Back, how did you actually feel about the book? And we've now, I think, gotten a little bit of the flavor. Yeah,
I ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
I ruined that
you
segue.
Did.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Don't really know where to go.
I don't think it was good. I mean, I think we unequivocally explored that I don't think it was good. I think it was I I was willing to give it a chance going in from the perspective like maybe it'll turn out like the Da Vinci Code, where there's just an intriguing way of stringing these references together. You know, maybe the treasure hunt aspect of it will have some fun puzzles that you'll be like, oh, this is a good reveal. And even that was not something that the book presented well, in my opinion. The puzzles were, you know, they weren't really puzzles. Like a character would like enter into a simulation where they would have to recite the movie War Games in its entirety.
Right.
Like that's something that actually happens in this book.
Right.
And then they do it
fairness,
and they do it again with another movie.
In fairness, War Games is outstanding. and you should be able to quote War Games from start to finish. Matthew Broderick
I've
is
never
a
seen
gem.
Neither have I.
Guys.
So Connor, you and I'll hang out.
Yeah.
I opened this segment by saying I'd never listened to your show, and that was not 100% true. It's like 98% true. On the way over to Chris's house this evening, I listened to 30 minutes of an episode about Armada, and I thought you had a really interesting observation about the book. So Klein, the author, often makes these references from, like, I saw it, I've experienced it in Ready Player One, and you're experiencing it now in Armada, where he makes a reference and then he beats you over the head with it for like 2 or 3 more sentences, and it's like, do you see that? Do you see I made a War Games joke? Hey. And then another player is gonna notice that I made a War Games joke, and then all of a sudden everyone's on the same page. Was there one moment in Ready Player One that stood out to you that was like, dude, you didn't need to beat us over the head with that?
Oh man,
Too many to count.
So this is the problem. Like the movie's coming out, and I'm gonna have to talk about this a lot. But I finished reading the book in November, so the specifics are not there. But like there is. So yeah, there's moments. There's the thing where he it's a well circulated passage online where he shows up outside a club in his DeLorean that he's equipped with Ghostbusters decals and an Ecto-1 license plate and something from Buckaroo Banzai, but then he just he shrinks it and puts it in his pocket, and it doesn't actually factor into anything. It just was sort of a it's like the opposite of Chekhov's gun. It's like Chekhov's crappily hashed together reference mobile, right? Because it doesn't matter. He wanted to do that. He wanted to mention that car, and so he wedged it into a scene. The Armada thing you might have mentioned was like the way that he'll structure a reference is like, the general said to me, you're going to be on the first, your ship's train back to Vietnam or whatever. And then he'll say like, the movie he was quoting was Top Gun, which is also where he had taken his online player handle from, which it's
Did you see that I made a Top Gun reference? Did you see it?
Exactly.
I made a Top Gun reference.
So it's that sort of artlessness that gets a little tired after a while, and sometimes you realize that after the second book of Nothing But That, Ready Player One had a frame story to explain why the character was doing this. In the Armada, it's just much more wedged in and artless. So you realize the guy doesn't really have much to bring to the table if he's not relying on these things. I'd be all for him trying to do something that, all right, buddy, like here's a book, here's a $1 million advance. One caveat. You cannot mention Star Wars or anything associated with it for the entire length of this novel, and just to see if he could pull it off.
The hard challenge.
Yeah.
He's probably not up for that. So the English major in me constantly wants to see the good in people's efforts, and they're like, oh man, you tried. You tried real hard. And also I listened to the book, so I had a little bit different experience, I think, because I wasn't watching the grammar happen or watching the Chekhov's gun not happen. I was just listening to a book, to a car enter a scene, and then he put it in, like I didn't have a visual almost for how those things didn't show back up. So I had a little bit of a different experience with it. So I guess my question is there anything substantive to be gained from this book? Like, is it saying anything bigger than just 80s references to you?
Oh man, so I think that's another thing about it, because I feel the same way. I wanted to find something good, and I certainly don't ever read something like this closely with a red pen in my hand like I do to take notes for this. But I think the answer is no to that. And I'm
Sure.
curious to see if
blunt.
there's going to be any sort of revisionist, comments about that as the movie happens, because there's going to be a lot of movie critics talking about it, being like, well, this is going to be a commentary on our increasingly isolated lives online. And it's like, well, no, this was not addressed in the book, and any opportunity they had to address anything like that was either handled so ham-fistedly or just tossed aside, because the next moment the character started talking about how his living room was a recreation of the living room in Family Ties, that It wasn't really same way as that if a character dies in the book, it's treated as a sad moment, and then the next moment they're playing Ms. Pac-Man or something.
Sure.
So I think that the opportunities to make commentaries were largely missed, to put it kindly. That's just how I feel about it.
No, it's great.
I have a feeling it's going to be pretty heavy-handed
In the movie?
in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even with
just
go
guessing.
on. Yeah, I mean, even with like the trailer itself, like Robert and I, we've not read Ready Player One. We've witnessed every YouTuber, gaming channel beat you over the head with Audible. My favorite book is Ready Player One putting our code for a free 1 month trial. So I mean, like the trailer was our first really experience with it, and the references were so heavy in the trailer. Like, it hinged so heavily on like trying to connect with you, like, oh, here's a DeLorean. It's like even the trailer itself just really beats you over the head with like, trying to like, hey, you see, we get your nostalgia. And I have a feeling we're really in for almost a weird Wreck-It Ralph kind of Steven Spielberg experience with this film.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of upset, though, because it is kind of an 80s pop culture thing. There have not been more Barbara Mandrell references. I'm just kind of upset. Katie Oslin, even Alabama, like, give us something,
Give us the Beat Boys.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
This might be a unique criticism of the film you're bringing up here.
Maybe too deep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to be in Joel Morgensen's review.
Exactly.
Probably not.
But I do want to emphasize, though, that this is not just a bad book because of the references. It's a bad book because it's poorly written, and the main character is a loathsome person who draws no empathy from anybody, and there's also just very weird, awkward things like a extended. Not rant, but an extended just discussion by the character about his jackin' habits, about his lubed up sex doll, that sort of stuff is just there's a weird sort of performative atheism screed about a woman at the very beginning of the book that's just wildly out of place and is very clearly the author's personal views being wedged into the book.
Sure.
So it's a lot of the stuff that gets passed around online is very much focused on the references, and that's fine because those are all terrible. But there's a lot more depth to the awfulness of the book to plumb, and that's I think hopefully what our podcast lets you experience.
Well, isn't the adage the painter always paints himself?
Oh yes. Oh, it couldn't be more clear that this is what the guy is doing within the first like 20 pages.
Sure.
And then you flip to the back and the author photo is him in a DeLorean. So it's like, yeah, all right, I know you like this stuff, but just I think sometimes you might have to.
372 pages of self-stroking.
Yeah. Think about how the rest of the world is living, whether this is a universal experience you're trying to convey to us here.
Well, awesome. Thanks for giving us your one, thoughts on the book, and two, overview of your podcast. I think it's great. I mean, the 30 minutes I listened to on the way over here were most enjoyable, and I will be tuning into more in the future.
I'm glad to hear. Yeah, and people listen to it without reading the books, which I still think is odd, but enough people did it that I was like, listen, man, if I could do this without reading Armada, I sure as hell would.
I don't think it would be a very trustworthy source, though.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, we're doing a live show too on April 11th. We're gonna fly out to Minneapolis and talk about the movie. Me and Mike at the Sisyphus Brewing Company. Should be a lot of fun.
That'll be a really good time. So I think that's pretty much everything. So I mean, we've talked about Connor just as a man, just who he is. your history and experiences with Rifftrax and Ready Player One, and 372 pages we'll never get back, which is such a good name for a podcast. So yeah, thank you so much, Connor, for coming and hanging out.
Yeah, guys,
telling
it was
us
my
about
pleasure.
everything. Why don't you tell the listeners all of the places that they can find you and your works?
Yeah. So yeah, you can go to Rifftrax and check out the movie commentaries that we do, the VODs that we almost have something up probably every other week or so. We just put one up called Oblivion 2, which is the sequel to Oblivion, which is not a very good movie, and the sequel is also not very good. But yeah, so that's that chance to hear the writing that I do for that all the time. You can see the Mystery Science Theater 20th anniversary reunion show that the twins were at, that I'm on stage during, and I looked out in the audience. I saw them standing there and cheering. It was very encouraging.
Glad to be moral
It
support.
warmed your soul.
Yeah, but you can. I would love it if you checked out my two novels that I mentioned, Gone Wayland and the Pole Vault Championship with the Entire Universe. You guys are going to link those on your blog.
Yep, we'll have those on our blog. So betweenthecons.com/listen, and you can link out to the Amazon books or Amazon listings for Connor's books, so you don't have to search for them yourself.
So that'll be fun. Those are the things that I'm probably the most proud of, just because it's been things that I've done all on my own. 372 pages we'll never get back is available at 372pages.com. It's on iTunes or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Twitter, I'm at C Lastowka, which I guess I could spell that for you, but maybe you guys could link that too, because
we'll link all of this on our blog for sure.
And Instagram, every now and then I'll post something funny or behind the scenes at one of our shows type of thing, so you can find me there at Conor Lastowka.
Yeah, and Rifftrax, if you're just listening and you don't feel like going to our blog, that is rifftrax.com, to listen to the just wonderful goodness that is Oblivion 2.
Yeah, well, let me recommend some better ones. Check out The Guy from Harlem. That's a great one. Birdemic is really, really funny.
And you were actually on Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Yeah, you can hear me on Batman vs. Superman. Me and Sean Thomason, the other senior writer, stepped into the booth for that one. But Roller Gator is by far.
Oh, it is so
Roller Gator is one of my. Roller Gator has my heart.
That is, oh my gosh.
Is that what I think it's about? A roller skating alligator?
It's not even true in its title. Like, it's so bad.
It's more like Backpack Gator on a roller skater.
Yeah, having him roller skate would have involved a much more expensive puppet.
It's like Trolls 2. Was about goblins.
Now I get it.
That was about goblins, which made no sense.
Or Cyborg Cop, I think we did, which did not have a cyborg.
Right.
You know what? When you're watching D-list movies, a lot of times you're going to get a title that does not have much to do with what you're actually watching. Yeah. Something that we've learned over the years.
Yeah. I had to say Trolls 2 out loud, and now all I can think is all the terrible stuff about Trolls 2. Like the city being called Nilbog, which is just goblin backwards. Okay.
Man. That one's probably due to revisit.
Yeah, I should probably watch that again. Anyways, Connor, thank you so much. Listeners, check out betweenthecons.com/listen. We're going to have all of Connor's stuff posted on our blog, as well as the episode, so you can share that with all your friends. And have them listen directly from our site instead of having to track us down in the podcast app. But check out betweenthecons.com for all of the things, social media. If you like our segue, check out betweenthecons.com/bandcamp. That'll link you out to Afixa. He makes that sweet Zelda dubstep that you love so much.
Ooh. Wow, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, it's a good time. So check that out, and you guys, we will be back on Thursday bringing you a brand new Pineapple episode. So tune in. You guys have a great week. Connor, again, thank you. And
my pleasure, guys. Anytime. It was a pleasure to talk to you again, twins, and I hope to see you at one of our live shows again at some point in time.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, listeners. Have a good one. We will talk to you on Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think what everybody really wants to see is 1999 Frosted Tips, Connor, honestly.
Yeah.